The airport PA system crackled with a final boarding call. Mark Thompson's fingers gently brushed the collar of Eliza's blazer, smoothing a wrinkle that wasn't there. He moved with the careful precision of someone handling delicate porcelain. "You packed the neck pillow, right? You said your neck gets sore when you fall asleep on planes." Mark pulled a light, gray memory foam pillow from his carry-on. The case, printed with the Starry Night pattern Eliza loved, was fresh. "I washed and dried the cover last night. It's soft." Eliza glanced down, a faint smile touching her lips. "I have it. It's business class, Mark. I'll be fine." Her gaze drifted over his shoulder, fixing on the departure screen above the gate. As if he hadn't noticed his wife's distraction, Mark kept pulling items from his bag. "I put the antacids in the side pocket, and a small bag of those lemon drops you like. Text me when you land." "Okay. I know." Eliza took the small pouch, her thumbs swiping across her phone screen a few times. "Ethan said he's sending a car to pick me up. It should already be at Seattle-Tacoma." Mark nodded. He reached to tuck a stray strand of hair behind her ear, but Eliza suddenly stepped forward, wrapping him in a firm, almost formal hug. It was so abrupt that Mark froze, his hands hovering in the air, unsure where to land. In 3 years of marriage, Eliza had rarely initiated a hug, let alone in a crowded public space like JFK. "Take care of yourself," she whispered in his ear, then quickly released him. She grabbed her roller bag and walked away without a backward glance, disappearing around the corner of the security line. Mark stood there, watching until she was gone. A few young women nearby shot him envious looks, whispering about what a sweet husband he was. He managed a weak smile, then slowly turned to leave. It was evening when he got back to their apartment. The emptiness of the place was a crushing weight. Mark flipped on every light, a futile attempt to chase away the suffocating silence. He went into the study to organize some files Eliza had left behind in a rush and found a strange phone in a desk drawer. Mark frowned. It wasn't her usual iPhone, but an older model Samsung. He hesitated for a second, then pressed the power button. No password. As the screen lit up, a WhatsApp notification popped into view. "Ethan Cole, we can finally be together. I waited too long for this." Mark's hand hovered over the screen, his heart suddenly hammering against his ribs. Logic screamed at him to put the phone down, but his fingers, acting on their own, tapped the message open. The chat history was a razor blade, methodically slicing him open. The last message, sent just before she boarded her flight, was from Eliza. "I'm on my way." Scrolling up revealed a history of late-night calls Mark had never known about, a flirty tone he'd never heard from her, hotel addresses sent by Ethan, and a message that read, "Don't forget to pack that black lingerie." Mark's vision blurred. He set the phone down and walked to the display cabinet in the living room. Front and center was their wedding photo. In it, he was kissing the bride's cheek, his face alight with pure happiness, while Eliza's gaze drifted somewhere off camera. The photographer had said she was just a little nervous, and Mark, laughing, had agreed that his wife was shy. Looking at it now, he saw it for what it was, disinterest. He opened the liquor cabinet and poured a whiskey. The alcohol burned his throat, but did nothing to extinguish the flashbacks igniting in his mind. Eliza's frequent late nights at the office on Fridays, her habit of always placing her phone face down, the way she would lower her voice whenever certain calls came in. He thought he'd given his wife freedom and trust. Instead, he'd just given her the space to deceive him. Outside, a plane streaked across the night sky. Mark wondered if it was the one carrying Eliza. All he knew for sure was that when that second phone lit up again, his entire world had been turned upside down. Mark sat in front of his laptop, the blue light of the screen illuminating his exhausted face. It was 3 a.m. The only sounds in the apartment were the click of his keyboard and his own occasional cough. The coffee on his desk was cold, sitting next to that damn burner phone. Ethan Cole, 35, honors graduate from NYU's Stern School of Business, currently vice president of West Coast operations for Stellara Innovations. Mark stared at the search results, a knot tightening in his throat. The man in the photo was handsome and confident in a tailored suit. It was the same man from Eliza's college photos, the boyfriend she'd dated for 4 years. Mark remembered the name because Ethan was always there, lurking in the corner of her graduation pictures. Once, while organizing old boxes after they got married, Mark had stumbled upon a photo of them together. "That's ancient history," Eliza had said dismissively. Apparently, the past wasn't as ancient as he'd thought. Mark clicked on the Stellara Innovations website and found the press release announcing the opening of their new Seattle office. The publication date was 3 months ago, exactly when Eliza had first brought up the idea of a transfer. In the accompanying photo, Ethan Cole stood at the center of the ribbon-cutting ceremony, beaming. A sharp pain shot through Mark's temple. He squeezed his eyes shut as fragments of memory pierced his mind like shards of glass. Eliza's sudden interest in Seattle, the calls from Stellara project team, on her phone, the cheerful way she hummed to herself while packing her bags. He shot up from his chair, the legs scraping harshly against the floor. Walking into the bedroom, Mark pulled open Eliza's closet, his fingers tracing the clothes hanging in neat rows. His gaze landed on a black lace teddy tucked away in the back, a style she rarely wore. He remembered seeing it once, on their anniversary. Don't forget to pack that black lingerie. Mark slammed his fist into the closet door. The sharp pain in his knuckles was a welcome distraction. He took a deep breath, pulled out his phone, and took a panoramic picture of the closet before carefully putting everything back exactly as it was. At dawn, Mark sent a text to his best friend, Leo, asking to meet at a coffee shop near their office. "You look like hell, man," Leo said, pushing a black coffee across the table. "Pulling all night, Toe." Mark shook his head and slid his phone over to Leo, the screen displaying Ethan Cole's corporate headshot. "Who's this?" Leo frowned. "Eliza's college boyfriend." Mark's voice was unervingly calm. "He's the VP at her new company. They've been in touch this whole time." Leo's expression shifted. He put his coffee down. "Mark, there's something I never told you. At the alumni reunion last year, somebody saw Eliza and him in a hallway. They were closed." Mark's fingers tightened around his mug, hot coffee splashing onto his hand without him flinching. "Why are you just telling me this now? I thought it was just a random encounter, and besides," Leo sighed, "you love her so much. I didn't want to be the guy who blew up your life." "Love?" Mark let out a bitter laugh. "She might have never loved me at all." Leo looked like he wanted to say more, but just clapped Mark on the shoulder. "What are you going to do?" Mark didn't answer right away. He stared out the window as the city awoke, bathed in the morning light. Everything was so vibrant, so alive. Only his heart was slowly dying. "I need proof," he said finally. Back home, Mark texted Eliza. "Landed okay?" "Everything going smoothly." He saw the receipt appear, but for 3 hours, there was no reply. Finally, in the afternoon, a short message came through. "Just got to the office. Super busy, talk later." Mark stared at the screen, a tightness in his chest. On previous work trips, Eliza had always called to say she'd landed safely, sometimes sending pictures of the airport or her hotel. Now, even a complete sentence felt like a luxury. At 9 that night, he tried a video call. It was declined. A text followed immediately. "In a meeting, can't talk." "This late?" Mark's fingers trembled as he typed. "Startup culture, you know how it is. You should get some sleep." Mark put the phone down and splashed cold water on his face in the bathroom. The man in the mirror had bloodshot eyes and a dark stubble shadowing his jaw. He remembered last month when Eliza had told him he was letting himself go. He just smiled and promised to buy a new bottle of aftershave. The next day at work, Mark was a ghost. During the design department's morning meeting, the director called on him to present his concept for the new project, and his mind went completely blank. Mark's proposal is actually really creative, a bright voice cut through the awkward silence. Mark turned to see Chloe Jensen, a new junior designer, smiling at him. "When we were brainstorming yesterday, his urban forest concept really struck me. Integrating natural elements into a modern office space fits the client's new wellness and sustainability brief perfectly." The director's expression softened. "All right, Mark, walk us through it." Mark shot Chloe a grateful look, quickly gathering his thoughts. He couldn't believe the young woman had not only remembered his off-the-cuff idea, but had just used it to save him. Later, Chloe caught him in the break room. "Hey, are you okay? You seemed really out of it today." "Just some stuff at home," Mark said with a weak smile. "Thanks for bailing me out back there." Chloe shook her head, her ponytail bouncing. "I was just being honest. Your design sense is amazing. For that kindergarten project last year, the way you turned the reading nook into a treehouse, the kids went crazy for it." Mark was surprised. That was a project from 6 months ago. He hadn't thought anyone but him remembered the details. The genuine admiration in her eyes was a warmth he hadn't felt in a long time. Certainly not from Eliza. "Oh, here." Chloe handed him a coffee. "I made extra. Splash of cream, no sugar, right?" He took the mug, stunned. "How did you know?" "You ordered it at the team lunch last week," she said with a smile. "I have a good memory." A sudden, sharp pang of sadness hit Mark. A colleague he'd known for less than a month remembered his coffee order, while his wife of 3 years had bought him a sugary latte just last week, even though he never drank sweet coffee. After work, Mark didn't go home. He drove to an electronics superstore on the outskirts of the city and bought a miniature spy camera and a voice recorder. His next stop was a law firm to ask about divorce and evidence collection. In New York, separation for 1 year is grounds for a no-fault divorce, the lawyer explained, adjusting his glasses. But with concrete proof of infidelity, the process can be expedited significantly. Mark nodded, his expression so calm he could have been discussing a stranger's life. Only he could feel the methodical twisting of the knife in his gut. When he got home, he sent a message to Eliza. "Miss you. Video call later?" Once again, the message was met with silence. It wasn't until late that night that she replied, "Things are crazy here. Let's try for the weekend. Good night." Mark stared at that cold good night, his fingers hovering over the keyboard before he finally put the phone down without a reply. He opened his laptop and began organizing everything he had: Ethan's resume, the address of the new Seattle office, Eliza's flight information, and the lawyer's contact details. The systematic arrangement of evidence gave him a strange sense of control, a way to impose order on his collapsing world. Their wedding photo hung on the wall above his desk. Eliza was smiling beautifully, but now Mark couldn't even be sure that smile had ever been real. Rain began to fall, tapping against the glass like 1,000 tiny accusations. Mark remembered the torrential downpour on the day he proposed. When Eliza had said yes, there were water droplets on her eyelashes. He'd always thought they were tears of joy. Now, he wondered if it was just the rain. The plane descended through the damp Seattle air. Mark loosened his collar. He had taken Friday off, telling Eliza he was surprising her for their 3rd wedding anniversary. Despite the poison of suspicion coiling in his gut, he clung to a sliver of hope. Maybe it was all a misunderstanding. Maybe the hug was just a formality. Maybe Eliza would see him and throw her arms around him, exclaiming, "What are you doing here?" In the terminal, Mark checked his reflection in a window. He got a haircut and was wearing the brand of shirt Eliza always said looked good on him. In his suitcase was her gift, a Tiffany necklace, almost identical to one she had admired in a shop window on their honeymoon. His phone buzzed. A text from Eliza. "Have to work this weekend, probably can't video chat. Don't wait up." A bitter smile formed on his lips. He had deliberately kept his trip a secret, wanting to see for himself what she was so busy with. Now, he was about to find out. He walked toward the arrivals hall, his heart pounding in time with his footsteps. In 3 years, he never once pulled a stunt like this, never checked up on her. He had always chosen to trust her, even when doubt crept in. But this was different. The messages on that burner phone were a splinter lodged deep under his skin, and he couldn't breathe until it was out. A crowd was gathered around the baggage claim. Mark stood back, his eyes scanning the exit. Eliza's flight had landed an hour ago. If she'd gone straight to the office, she would be gone by now. Mark's breath caught in his throat. There, in a cafe near the exit, sat Eliza with a tall man. She was wearing the black dress he'd given her for her birthday last year, now a tool to charm someone else. The man's back was to him, but his profile perfectly matched the photos on Mark's laptop. Ethan Cole. Mark instinctively ducked behind a pillar. Cold sweat slicked his palm on the handle of his suitcase. His rational mind told him to walk over there, to confront them, but his body was frozen to the spot, his eyes locked on the scene. Eliza was laughing, a radiant, uninhibited laugh he hadn't seen in years. She was wearing bright red lipstick, not the subtle pink she usually wore for him. Ethan reached out and gently wiped a speck of foam from the corner of her mouth. The intimacy of the gesture was blinding. Then the worst happened. Eliza leaned forward and pressed a light, lingering kiss on Ethan's lips. The world tilted. Mark had to brace himself against the pillar. The kiss was brief, but it was seared onto his retinas. He numbly pulled out his phone, opened the camera, and zoomed in. Through the lens, he saw Eliza glance at Ethan's watch. They stood up. Ethan casually took her suitcase with one hand and wrapped the other around her waist. They walked toward the exit. Mark followed, a ghost in their periphery. His heartbeat was so loud he was sure they could hear it, but the airport noise swallowed everything. They waited in the taxi line. As they got into the cab, Ethan leaned in and whispered something in Eliza's ear. She laughed and playfully swatted his arm. The gesture was painfully familiar. 7 years ago, on their college campus, Mark had seen her do the exact same thing to her then-boyfriend, Ethan Cole. Back then, Mark was just the quiet admirer, watching from a distance. He never imagined history would repeat itself in such a cruel, ironic way. The taxi pulled away. Mark quickly hailed another one. "Follow that cab," he said, his voice raw. "But don't get too close." The driver glanced at him in the rearview mirror, but asked no questions and hit the gas. The cityscape blurred outside the window as Mark's eyes remained fixed on the car ahead. He thought of the wedding photo he'd left on the coffee table, of Eliza's trembling voice when she said, "I do," of the way she always slept with her back to him after an argument. The memories were a dull knife, twisting in his gut. The taxi stopped in front of a 5-star hotel. Mark watched Eliza and Ethan walk into the lobby, watched Ethan get the key card from the front desk, watched them get into the elevator together. He stood by a planter outside, his legs numb. The sky darkened, but Mark didn't move. He needed proof. Hard, undeniable proof. His camera was in his bag, but he knew he couldn't just walk in and start filming. He found a seat in a coffee shop across the street, ordered the strongest black coffee they had, and kept his eyes glued to the hotel entrance. 9 o'clock, 10, 11. The hotel glowed, and Mark's coffee cup was refilled 3 times. At midnight, his phone buzzed. It was Eliza, finally done with work. So tired. Going to bed. Good night. Mark stared at the message and started to laugh, a harsh, broken sound that made the couple at the next table look over. He pictured her lying in Ethan's arms as his fingers trembled over the screen, typing a reply. That sounds rough. Get some rest. I love you. After sending it, he ran to the bathroom and dry-heaved over the sink, but nothing came up. The man in the mirror was a stranger with wild, red-rimmed eyes, a twisted grin fixed on his face like a character from a horror movie. At 1 in the morning, Mark moved, hiding behind a parked car across the street. He set up his camera, focusing the long lens on the hotel entrance. The humid southern air was thick with exhaust fumes. Sweat soaked through his shirt. 3:17 a.m. The lobby lights dimmed. Mark's muscles were screaming, but he held his position. 5:40 a.m. The sky began to lighten. Street cleaners made their rounds. 6:30 a.m. The morning shift of hotel staff started to arrive. 7:15 a.m. The elevator doors opened, and Eliza and Ethan walked out. She had changed into a light-colored suit Mark had never seen before. Her hair was loosely pinned up, and a distinct red mark, a hickey, was visible on her neck. Ethan, carrying both their suitcases, looked refreshed as he checked them out at the front desk. The click of the shutter was lost in the morning traffic. Mark captured everything. Ethan whispering in Eliza's ear, Eliza playfully pushing him away, their embrace as they waited for a car. Every frame was a bullet tearing through him, but miraculously he was still standing, still shooting. A taxi arrived, and they got in and drove away. Only then did Mark lower the camera, his fingers spasming from holding the same position for hours. He walked slowly back to the budget motel he'd checked into, took a long, hot shower, and lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling. The photos were already backed up to the cloud, with a copy sent to his lawyer's email. Mark emailed his boss, claiming he had food poisoning and needed a sick day. He booked a flight home for that afternoon. At the airport, he threw the Tiffany necklace into a trash can. On the flight back, Mark sat next to an elderly couple. The husband held his wife's hand the entire time, occasionally whispering to ask if she needed water. The wife dozed on his shoulder, her silver hair brushing against his collar. Mark turned his head to stare at the endless expanse of clouds, his eyes burning and dry. When he got back to the empty apartment, the first thing he did was take down their wedding photo from the bedroom wall and hide it in his storage closet. Then he called his lawyer to schedule a meeting for the next day. Based on the photos and chat logs you've provided, we can certainly establish an affair, the lawyer said, adjusting his glasses. But to really expedite the divorce, more direct evidence, like proof they are cohabitating, would be ideal. Mark nodded. What if I can get footage of them entering the same residence together? That would be very helpful, the lawyer paused. Mr. Thompson, you seem remarkably calm. Mark offered a faint smile. When your heart is dead, it's easy to be calm. He went home and began a systematic purge. He packed up photos, chat histories, gift receipts, travel itineraries, every piece of evidence that their marriage had existed, which now served only as proof of its death. He put Eliza's hairbrush, still on the bathroom counter, into a drawer. He placed her slippers, neatly arranged by the door, into a shoebox. On the surface, everything looked normal. A visitor would still assume this was the home of a happy couple, with the wife simply away on business. But beneath the placid surface, Mark had begun a delicate surgery, excising Eliza from his life without leaving a scar. That evening, Eliza surprised him with a video call. Mark took a deep breath before answering. Done with work early today? He asked, his tone light, as if he hadn't spent his morning watching photos of her leaving a hotel with her lover. Eliza's face appeared on screen, her background an unfamiliar living room. Just missed you. How was your day? The usual, Mark smiled. You? Settling in okay? It's good, just busy. Her eyes darted away from the screen. Oh, there might be a training seminar next month, so I don't think I'll be able to make it back. Mark nodded, his heart constricting. That's fine. Work comes first. They exchanged a few more pleasantries. Eliza was distracted the whole time, nearly slipping up twice. Just before hanging up, she asked, Is everything okay at home? Everything's fine, Mark said. I'm watering your succulents every day. Eliza froze for a second, a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes. Thanks. After the screen went dark, Mark sat in the silence for a long time. He did, in fact, water her plants every day, even though, like her, they seemed to thrive on neglect. Outside, a full moon hung in the sky. He remembered a similar moon on the night he proposed. Eliza had said, "The moonlight is so beautiful," and he'd thought she was talking about their future. Now he understood. The moonlight was beautiful, but it was also cold and impossibly distant. The rain beat against the windows. Mark stood in the middle of the empty living room, his suitcase at his feet. He looked around the space that had once been filled with laughter and now held only echoes. Dad's back is acting up again, so I'm going to go help him out for a bit, Mark said into his phone, his voice perfectly steady. I'll probably stay upstate for a while. On the other end, Eliza's voice was distant, tinged with distraction. Okay, sure. Tell them I said hi. In the background, he could hear the clatter of a restaurant and the low murmur of a man's voice, Ethan's. Sounds noisy over there. Are you out to dinner? Mark asked deliberately, his thumb tracing the handle of his suitcase. Oh, yeah. A team dinner. Eliza's words came out a little too quickly. Can I call you back later? Don't worry about it. You have fun, Mark said, a tight smile on his face. I might be gone a week or two. The cell service isn't great up there, so it might be hard to get in touch. It's fine. Work is important, she replied almost instantly. Then, as if catching herself, added, You take care of yourself. After hanging up, Mark stood in the silent room for a long time, the sound of the rain his only company. He did 3 things before he left. He watered Eliza's succulents, left a note on the coffee table that said, Don't forget to eat, and turned their wedding photo on the nightstand face down. The last gesture was pointless, but it gave him a sliver of twisted satisfaction. His new apartment was a short walk from the office. It was sparsely furnished, but Mark didn't care. He set up his laptop on a folding table and opened a meticulously crafted spreadsheet titled Timeline. It was filled with dates, tasks, and progress bars. He checked a box next to Separation Initiated, and the spreadsheet automatically calculated the remaining days. 365. 1 year. After that, legally, he would be free. His phone buzzed. It was Leo. You really moved out? You sure about this? Mark replied, Better than living in a house full of lies. Let me know if you need anything. Oh, and the new library project is kicking off next week. The director wants you leading it. Mark closed his phone and walked to the window. The rain had stopped, and a few stars were visible through the breaking clouds. He remembered a line from a book he'd read in college. When a sword of truth pierces the heart, silence is the most dignified bandage. The next day, Mark arrived at the office half an hour early. He walked straight to a cubicle in the far corner, a spot he'd specifically requested, away from the main team. You're an early, Mark. Chloe's bright voice came from behind him. He turned to see her standing at the entrance, holding a roll of blueprints. The morning sun streamed in behind her, outlining her in gold. New project. Wanted to get a head start, he answered curtly, turning back to his desk. Chloe walked over to the desk next to his. I heard it's the city library renovation. My senior thesis was on public reading spaces. I might have some ideas that could help. Mark looked up, really looking at her for the first time. She was wearing a simple white shirt and jeans, her hair in a casual ponytail, her eyes impossibly bright. She radiated a sincerity and passion he hadn't seen in a long time. Thanks, I'll keep that in mind, he said, his tone softening slightly. For the next week, Mark poured himself into his work. His life ran like a precision machine. Meetings and design sessions during the day, organizing divorce evidence at night. He stopped initiating contact with Eliza, and her text dwindled to a perfunctory, all good, once a week. On Friday, the team presented their mid-stage proposal. As Mark explained his concept of turning the children's section into an enchanted forest, the director's eyes lit up. That's a fantastic idea. Bookshelves shaped like trees, reading stools like mushrooms. The kids will love it, he said approvingly. Mark, you're really on your game lately. After the meeting, Chloe caught him in the break room. Mark, that forest concept was brilliant. I was just reading a paper last night about child cognitive development, and it said natural environments significantly improve focus. She chattered excitedly. Mark found himself smiling, a real, genuine smile, for the first time since he'd moved out. Can you send me a link to that paper? He asked, accepting the coffee she handed him. Cream, no sugar. She'd remembered. Of course. I'll text it to you. Mark hesitated for a fraction of a second. For 3 years, his contact list had been strictly work and family. Eliza had been his only favorite. Now, okay. He pulled up his QR code and watched her scan it. A new contact notification popped up. Chloe's profile picture was a cartoon sheep, smiling goofily. That night, back in his rental, Mark ate a bowl of instant ramen while scrolling through his phone. A text from Eliza came in. Something came up at work. Won't be able to come back this weekend. He stared at the screen, a sense of absurdity washing over him. She had completely forgotten his lie about visiting his dad, not even bothering to ask how he was. He put down his chopsticks and replied, "Okay, take care." Then he opened the link Chloe had sent and started reading. Over the weekend, Mark met with his lawyer, who confirmed that proving Eliza was living with someone else would greatly speed up the divorce. "I need hard evidence," Mark said. "Video is best," the lawyer advised. "But there are privacy risks if you're discovered." Mark nodded, a plan already forming. He left the law firm and went back to the electronics store. Mark's life became a split screen. By day, he was the dedicated lead designer. By night, he was a detective, gathering evidence of his wife's infidelity. He made periodic trips back to their apartment to water the plants and swap out food in the fridge, maintaining the illusion that he was still living there. Each time, he left a small, invisible marker, a single hair taped across a door jamb, a sesame seed at the edge of a rug. The markers were never disturbed. May 12th was Eliza's birthday. Mark had a bouquet of roses and a designer bracelet delivered to her office in Seattle. The card read, "Forever yours," in handwriting as neat and impersonal as a computer font. That same day, he received an update from the private investigator he'd hired. The photos showed Eliza and Ethan at a Michelin star restaurant, with Ethan fastening a diamond necklace around her neck. Mark saved the photos to his evidence folder and sent Eliza a happy birthday text. Her reply was brief and detached. "Got the gift, thanks. So busy, forgot to tell you I got promoted. We'll probably be based here permanently." Mark stared at the message. He realized Eliza was trying to gently euthanize their marriage, not with a dramatic confrontation, but with the slow, quiet strangulation of distance and indifference. He replied, "Congratulations. I'm happy for you." Then he opened his timeline spreadsheet and checked the box next to confirm subject has no intention of reconciliation. The library project wrapped up, a huge success. At the celebration dinner, the director singled out Mark and Chloe. "You two are a dream team," he toasted. "The next big project is yours." Chloe blushed and glanced at Mark, who raised his glass to her. He noticed a simple woven bracelet on her wrist, the kind he used to like in college. "Did you make that?" he asked. Her eyes lit up. "You can tell. It's a hobby of mine. It's just a simple friendship knot, but they say it brings good luck." Mark thought of Eliza, who would never wear such a cheap trinket, preferring only precious metals and stones. The contrast struck him. After dinner, Mark and Chloe walked toward the subway together. A cool breeze swept through, and Chloe shivered. "Cold?" Mark asked, already shrugging off his suit jacket. She shook her head, but he draped it over her shoulders anyway. The gesture felt surprisingly natural. "Thanks," she said softly. "Mark, you seem different lately." "Different how?" "I'm not sure." She tilted her head. "Lighter, maybe? Before, it always felt like you were carrying something heavy." Mark was silent for a moment. "Maybe I finally put some things down," he said. At the station, they said their goodbyes. Watching Chloe disappear into the crowd, Mark realized that for the first time since the separation began, he was looking forward to tomorrow. Back in his rental, he checked the PI's latest email. The attached photos showed Eliza and Ethan carrying grocery bags into a sleek Seattle apartment building. The investigator's note read, "Confirmed cohabitation after 3 consecutive days of surveillance." Mark filed the photos and opened his calendar. Day 47. 318 days remaining. The number was still large, but it no longer felt suffocating. He turned off the light and lay down on the narrow single bed. Outside, a sliver of a new moon hung in the sky, like a faint wound, slowly beginning to heal. The rainy season in Colorado had just passed, leaving the air fragrant with damp earth. Mark stood on a small wooden bridge in Telluride, watching the clear creek burble over the stones below. It was day 537 of his separation and day 7 of his solo trip across the country. He'd finally quit his job. His backpack held a camera, a tripod, and his now dog-eared divorce timeline. Just 193 days to go. "Sir, could you take a picture for me?" The familiar voice made Mark spin around. Chloe stood at the other end of the bridge, holding a colorful parasol that cast dappled light on her face. "Chloe." Mark blinked, sure he was hallucinating. "What are you doing here?" "Vacation," she said, jogging over. "Didn't I tell you I was taking my PTO last week?" She looked him up and down. "You're the one who vanished. The director was freaking out when you put in your 2 weeks." Mark took her phone and gestured for her to stand back on the bridge. Through the viewfinder, Chloe's smile was as bright as the historic town behind her. 3, 2, 1. The shutter clicked. Got it. Thanks. She came over to look, her hair brushing his arm. It smelled faintly of coconut shampoo. Wow, great shot. Are you a serious photographer? Just a hobby, he said, then hesitated. Are you here alone? Yeah, my friend bailed on me last minute, she shrugged. It's fine. I prefer traveling solo anyway. More freedom. They walked along the creek until they found a tea house. They sat in the sun-drenched room, light filtering through the carved wooden window frames. So, Chloe said, cradling her cup, you're here clearing your head, too? Mark watched the tea leaves dance in his cup. For a year and a half, he hadn't told anyone the full story, not even Leo. Something like that, he said finally. Been separated for over a year. Needed a change of scenery. Chloe's eyes widened slightly, but she showed no pity or invasive curiosity, just nodded. Traveling alone is the best for that. You can do whatever you want without having to worry about anyone else. Her words hit a nerve. He remembered his one and only trip with Eliza, their honeymoon, where she complained the hotels weren't nice enough and the attractions were too crowded. The entire time, he'd been walking on eggshells. What about you? He asked, changing the subject. Why Colorado? I heard the stars are incredible here, she said, her face lighting up. I signed up for a camping trip at the base of the mountains tomorrow night. They say you can see the Milky Way. An impulse struck Mark. He planned a day trip to the mountains, but camping under the stars sounded infinitely better. Is there still room? The next evening, they were on a shuttle bus heading into the Rockies. Most of the other tourists were couples or groups of friends. Mark and Chloe sat in the back, sharing a bag of dried apricots. So, Chloe asked quietly, is it hard, being separated? Mark looked out at the passing pine forests. How could he describe the last year and a half? The initial devastation, the numbness that followed, and now a quiet acceptance. It's like an amputation, he said. Agonizing at first. You get used to it, but you still get phantom limb pain. Chloe nodded thoughtfully and didn't press for details. Mark was grateful for her tact. The campsite was in a meadow at the foot of a towering mountain. As the sun set, the peak glowed gold like a burning torch. Mark helped Chloe set up her tent, then assembled his tripod to shoot the night sky. You're really good at this, she said, looking over his shoulder at the test shots on his camera's display. Mark adjusted the focus. Took a few classes in college. Got too busy with work and let it go. He paused. Eliza hated it. Said it was a waste of time. The words slipped out before he could stop them. It was the first time he'd ever spoken so bluntly about the friction in his marriage to anyone. Chloe didn't respond right away. She just reached into her backpack and pulled out 2 cans of beer. Stars and beer. The perfect combination. After darkness fell, the Milky Way appeared in all its glory. A river of light stretched across the sky. It's beautiful, Chloe whispered, her voice full of awe. It feels like a reset button for your soul. As his camera took a long exposure shot, Mark heard himself say, I saw stars like this the night I found out she was cheating on me. It was like opening a floodgate. Under the vast, silent watch of the galaxy, Mark told her everything. The airport, the hotel stakeout, the cold, methodical gathering of evidence. Chloe listened quietly, sipping her beer, never interrupting. The ridiculous part is, Mark said with a bitter laugh, I still go back to water her damn succulents. Every single time. Chloe turned to him, the starlight reflected in her eyes. That's not ridiculous. That's kind. The temperature dropped. Mark gave Chloe his jacket, leaving him in just a sweater. They sat side by side outside their tents, finishing the last of the beer. You know, Chloe said suddenly, a lot of people at the firm really admire you. That enchanted forest concept for the library was genius. The director said it was the best design proposal he'd seen in 5 years. Mark was surprised. I thought everyone just saw me as some boring, middle-aged designer. No way. Chloe shook her head. You're just quiet, like a dormant volcano. No one knows how much fire is inside. The metaphor warmed him. To Eliza, he had probably been nothing more than a dull, predictable hill. On the way back to Telluride, they agreed to travel together for a few more days. Chloe wanted to see Mesa Verde, and Mark had no set plans. As the shuttle swayed on the winding mountain roads, Chloe fell asleep on his shoulder, her breathing even and calm. Mark carefully pulled out his phone and checked the latest email from his PI. The attachment was a photo of Eliza and Ethan grocery shopping, dated yesterday. In the picture, Ethan was impatiently shrugging off Eliza's hand from his arm. And Eliza's expression, Mark zoomed in, was the same look of weary resignation he'd seen so many times in their last year together. He put the phone away and looked out the window. For the first time since he'd left home, he felt a genuine sense of peace. The next few days were a dream. They explored the cliff dwellings of Mesa Verde, hiked through aspen groves, and drove the stunning million-dollar highway. Mark took hundreds of photos, and Chloe was his most enthusiastic audience. She saw the emotion he was trying to capture, the wisdom in an old woman's wrinkles, the loneliness in a stray dog's eyes. "You have a gift," she told him seriously on their last night. "These should be seen by more people." That night, they had a farewell drink in their hostel's courtyard. Chloe was flying home tomorrow, and Mark had decided to head north toward Wyoming. "Thanks for this," Mark said, raising his glass. "This was better than I could have imagined." Chloe clinked her glass against his. "So, Wyoming, then maybe Yellowstone?" "Yeah," Mark paused. "I'm actually thinking of doing this full-time for a while. Travel photography." The idea had just crystallized, but saying it out loud felt right. Chloe wasn't surprised. "That sounds amazing. You have my number. Call me if you need anything." The next morning, Chloe handed him a small box. "A parting gift. Open it on the road." He handed her an envelope. "Me too." He watched her taxi disappear into the morning mist. Inside the box was a small, hand-carved wooden model of his camera, with the date and the words "The Stars" engraved on the bottom. He opened the envelope she'd given him. It was a print of his favorite photo of the Milky Way. On the back, she'd written, "Thanks for showing me the stars." On the bus to Jackson Hole, Mark got a call from his lawyer. "The evidence is more than sufficient," he said, "and the 1-year separation is complete. We can file whenever you're ready." Mark looked out at the passing mountain ranges. "Let's wait. Not until I'm done with this trip." After hanging up, he opened the encrypted folder on his phone. In the most recent photo, Eliza stood alone in a grocery store aisle, looking lost. Ethan was in the frame's edge, smiling warmly at his own phone, but not at her. Mark remembered standing in JFK with the Tiffany necklace, so full of hope. He never would have imagined that a year later, he'd be on a bus to Wyoming, his heart warmed by a small wooden camera from a girl he'd just met. The bus rounded a curve, and sunlight flooded the cabin. Mark squinted and dragged the encrypted folder into the trash. The date on his laptop screen made Mark pause. September 18th, 2023. Exactly 1 year since he'd moved out. The morning light cut through the blinds, striping the floor like prison bars. Today, he was being paroled. He took a sip of bitter coffee and opened his laptop. The divorce filing was ready. His finger hovered over the trackpad for a second before clicking send. A submission successful notification popped up. Mark exhaled, a profound sense of relief washing over him. His lawyer replied moments later, "Received and filed. She should be served within 3 days. This should be very smooth." Mark closed the laptop. His phone buzzed. It was Chloe. "Today's the day, right? Celebration dinner tonight?" A smile touched his lips. "Probably not a good idea. The papers go out today. I need to be ready for whatever comes." "Got it. Call if you need backup." She sent a flexing bicep emoji. Just then his phone rang. The name on the screen made him frown. "Eliza." "Hello," he answered, his voice impossibly calm. "Mark." Her voice was thin, laced with an emotion he couldn't decipher. I'm back in New York." Mark's hand tightened on the phone. "Back?" "Yeah, just landed at JFK." She paused. "I want to surprise you. Are you at the apartment? Can I come over?" Her timing was no coincidence. But it didn't matter. It was time to face her. "I'm not there," he said. "Let's meet somewhere. There's something we need to discuss." They agreed on the coffee shop where he'd first discovered the burner phone, a location choice steeped in cruel irony. Before leaving, Mark put everything in his briefcase, printed chat logs, photos, and a video file of Eliza and Ethan entering their apartment building, all meticulously labeled. Eliza was 20 minutes late. In the past, this would have driven him crazy with anxiety. Now he just calmly ordered another coffee. "Sorry, traffic was insane," she said, setting a suitcase down. She was thinner than he remembered, impeccably dressed in a beige trench coat. He gestured for her to sit. "What can I get you?" "Americano." "Black," she said, studying him. "You've changed." Mark didn't respond. He had changed. He worked out regularly, wore his hair shorter, and had traded his business casual wardrobe for comfortable jeans and t-shirts. "Why the sudden trip back?" he asked. She stirred her coffee, her eyes avoiding his. "Corporate restructuring. I applied for a transfer back to headquarters." She looked up. "And Ethan and I broke up." Mark's expression didn't flicker. He just gave a slight "Mark, She took a breath. "I went by the apartment. Half your clothes are gone. The photos in the study are missing. What's going on?" The waiter dropped off the check. Mark took it and slid a thick manila folder across the table toward her. "Today marks 1 year since we separated," he said, his voice flat. "This morning, I filed for divorce." Eliza's face went white. She stared at the folder as if it were a venomous snake. What are you talking about?" I'm talking about our marriage being over. Mark opened the folder to the first photo, the kiss at the airport. It's been over since the day you got on that plane. Her hand trembled as she picked up the photo, then dropped it as if it were hot. You followed me. I confirmed a suspicion. He flipped to the next page, the photo of them outside the hotel. Then I hired a private investigator who documented you and Ethan living together. One by one, the photos laid out their life. Grocery shopping, dinners, entering the apartment building. The last was a recent shot of Ethan with his arm around another woman. No, it's not like that. Eliza's voice rose, drawing looks from nearby tables. Ethan and I broke up a long time ago. He lied to me. Mark calmly gathered the photos. When you got together and when you broke up is irrelevant to me now. Mark, please, let me explain, she said, grabbing his hand. I made a mistake, I know I did. But this past year, I realized how stupid I was. You're the one who really loves me. He gently pulled his hand away and took a final document from the folder. This is the divorce agreement. I've already signed it. The division of assets is fair. I didn't touch any of your things. You can have the apartment if you want it. Eliza shot to her feet, knocking over her coffee cup. You can't do this. We were married for 5 years. You can't just give up. 3 years of marriage, 1 year of separation. He corrected, blotting the spill with napkins. And I'm not the one who gave up, Eliza. You did the moment you chose him. I was confused. Her voice broke. I thought that was love, but it was just an impulse. Mark, please give me another chance. We can start over. He shook his head, his eyes calm and clear. There is no we anymore. The court will schedule a hearing. If you don't agree to these terms, we can litigate. She snatched the agreement from the table and tore it to pieces. I'm not signing it. Do you hear me? I refuse. The shredded paper fluttered down onto the coffee-stained table. Mark almost smiled. He reached into his briefcase and produced an identical copy. I brought 5. You can keep tearing. Eliza's chest heaved, tears streaking her perfect makeup. Why are you being so cruel? Because I made one mistake. One. Mark's voice finally rose. Eliza, you lied to me for an entire year. This was a calculated betrayal that started the moment you applied for that transfer. The entire cafe was staring now. Mark took a breath, forcing himself back to a low tone. I gave you a year, Eliza. If you had any real remorse, you had countless opportunities to come back. But you only remembered me, your backup plan, after he dumped you. Her lips trembled, but she couldn't form a reply. She sank back in her chair, tears falling silently. Do you hate me? Mark thought for a moment. No, he said, shaking his head. I just don't care anymore. The words hit her harder than any angry accusation could have. The color drained from her face. The apartment is yours, Mark said, standing up and placing cash on the table for the bill. My things are already gone. The lawyer will contact you about the final paperwork. Mark, she cried out as he turned to leave. Do you really not love me at all anymore? He stopped, but didn't turn around. I love the person I thought you were. But that person never really existed. Outside, the September sun was blindingly bright. Mark stood on the sidewalk and took a deep, cleansing breath. His phone vibrated. It was Chloe. How did it go? He replied, it's over. Her call came 3 seconds later. Are you okay? The concern in her voice made a wave of exhaustion wash over him. Yeah, just tired. Where are you? I'll pick you up. I'm covering a story nearby. 20 minutes later, a white SUV pulled up. Chloe hopped out, wearing jeans, a t-shirt, and a press pass. She took one look at him, didn't ask a single question, and just pulled him into a solid hug. Are you hungry? She asked, smiling. I know a great faux place around here. He nodded, realizing he hadn't eaten all day. In the car, she put on some light indie music, offering a comfortable silence that was more soothing than any words could have been. She tore up the agreement. Mark said suddenly, said she wouldn't sign. Chloe's fingers tapped on the steering wheel. And I had backups, he said, looking out the window. The lawyer says it doesn't matter. With the separation and the proof of infidelity, the divorce is a sure thing. At the small, clean Vietnamese restaurant, Chloe ordered for both of them, remembering exactly what he liked. So, she asked, sipping her iced tea, what's next? Resignation letter is written. I'm turning it in next week, he said. Then I'm going to drive west. Always wanted to photograph Wyoming and Montana. For how long? Don't know. A few months, maybe longer. He looked at her. You. Her eyes lit up. Next month, I'm heading to Philadelphia for a series on urban renewal. If you're still around, you should come check it out. After lunch, she insisted on driving him home. Downstairs, Mark hesitated. Do you want to come up? I bought a new projector. Haven't tried it out yet. Chloe glanced at her watch and then smiled. Sure. How about a free afternoon? In the elevator, his phone rang. It was Eliza. He declined the call. Chloe pretended not to notice. His new apartment was neat and minimalist. The bookshelves were lined with photography collections and travel guides. Several of his own photos hung on the walls. Chloe stood in front of a large print of a star-filled sky over a mountain. "Is this from our camping trip?" "Yeah," he said, handing her a beer from the fridge. "The Milky Way. Took a while to get the processing right." "It was worth it," she said, her fingers brushing his as she took the bottle. "This one has soul." That afternoon, they watched an old movie, though neither of them paid much attention. As the sun set, casting long shadows across the living room, Chloe stood to leave. "Thanks for today," Mark said at the door. "You really helped." She turned, stood on her toes, and gave him a quick, gentle hug. "Congratulations on your freedom, Mark." After she left, the apartment felt quiet but not lonely. His phone rang again. It was Eliza. He declined it, then blocked her number. A minute later, a text came through from a number he didn't recognize. "Mark, please. We need to talk. I went to your office. They said you quit. Where are you living? Just give me a chance to explain." He deleted the message without replying and went back to the living room to prep his camera for the journey ahead. The gallery was on the third floor. Lin Yu rode the escalator up, her heart hammering. The exhibition space was minimalist, with large, beautifully framed prints mounted on white walls. She scanned the room, relieved not to see Zhou Ming. The photos were stunning, mostly landscapes and portraits imbued with a quiet power. Then, she stopped dead in front of a series titled The Departure. The photos contained no people, only empty spaces, a half-open closet, the faint outline of a book in the dust on a nightstand, a single toothbrush holder on a bathroom counter. Her hands began to tremble. These were scenes from their home, or what was once their home. They had been taken the day he left, and every detail was a fresh wound. "This series is powerful, isn't it?" Lin Yu flinched. She turned around slowly. Zhou Ming was standing there. He was leaner, tanner, and his eyes were brighter than she'd ever seen them. He looked at her, a flicker of surprise quickly replaced by a calm neutrality. "Lin Yu, it's been a long time. 2 years. She had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times, but now, all her prepared speeches vanished. "These photos," she finally managed, gesturing to the wall. "Yeah, that was our place," he said, his voice even. "I shot them the day I moved out." "Ming, how does this layout look?" A bright, cheerful voice interrupted them. A young woman with a ponytail and a camera around her neck walked up and linked her arm through Zhou Ming's, only then noticing Lin Yu. "Oh, sorry, I didn't realize you were with someone." Zhou Ming patted her hand gently. "Su Ting, this is Lin Yu. Lin Yu, this is my fiancée, Su Ting." "Fiancé." The word hit Lin Yu like a physical blow. She forced a smile. "Hello." Su Ting's eyes widened for a second with recognition, but she recovered instantly, extending a hand. "It's a pleasure to meet you. I've heard a lot about you." "Heard a lot?" Lin Yu wanted to scoff, but the young woman's gaze was sincere, devoid of any victor's triumph. "The exhibition is wonderful," Lin Yu said stiffly. "Life is full of surprises," Zhou Ming shrugged. His phone rang. "Sorry, I have to take this. It's the curator." He stepped away, leaving the two women in a suffocating silence. "How did you two meet?" Lin Yu asked. "In Yunnan," Su Ting said simply. "We were traveling in the same area." She paused. "We were colleagues before that, but we didn't really know each other then." Then, the word echoed in Lin Yu's mind. A terrible thought surfaced. "How long have you been together?" she asked, her voice sharp. Su Ting seemed to read her mind. "We started dating a year after his divorce was finalized, if you're worried about the timeline." Her tone was polite, but her eyes were firm. "I've seen all the evidence, Ms. Lin, including the photos from the hotel." The blood drained from Lin Yu's face. He had shown this woman everything. "That's all in the past," she snapped. "I agree," Su Ting smiled faintly. "The important thing is that he's happy now." Zhou Ming returned. "Everything okay?" "Perfect," Su Ting said, taking his arm again. "Ms. Lin was just asking how we met." Zhou Ming gave Lin Yu a complex look. "Su Ting was the light at the end of a very dark tunnel for me," he said simply. Lin Yu watched them walk away, a heavy weight settling in her chest. She wandered aimlessly until she found herself in front of another series, Rebirth. It was filled with pictures of Su Ting, laughing in the snow, her profile concentrated as she took a photo, her sleepy face in the morning sun. Every image radiated love. Below each photo was a timestamp. The earliest was from December 2023, 3 months after her divorce from Zhou Ming was final. He hadn't lied. His betrayal was her own invention. Hers had been brutally real. "Do you like this series?" She turned to find Zhou Ming standing behind her, alone this time. It's very vivid, she said. You never used to shoot portraits. I never had a subject worth shooting before, he replied quietly. Can we talk? Lin Yu asked, her voice desperate. Alone, they found a quiet cafe. How have you been? She began. Good, he said simply. Traveling, photography. I met Su Ting. Are you really getting married? Next month. In Yunnan, where we first met. Zhou Ming, I know I made a mistake, she pleaded. Our 5 years together. Doesn't that mean anything? 3 years, he corrected her. The last 2 were just a legal formality. Our marriage ended the moment you chose Chen Yuan. I broke up with him long before you filed for divorce, she insisted. He lied to me, and I realized how good you were. Zhou Ming shook his head and slid his phone across the table. It showed a photo. This was taken in March of last year. You and Chen Yuan at a supermarket. His arm is around your waist. Lin Yu stared, speechless. The photo was taken 6 months after she and Sean had supposedly broken up. Lin Yu don't, his voice was almost pitying. The PI followed you for a full year. I know you got back together and broke up 3 more times. I know he finally went back to his ex-girlfriend for good. And you only gave up on him 6 months ago. Tears streamed down her face. You hate me that much. I don't hate you, he said, his voice surprisingly gentle. In fact, I should thank you. If it weren't for you, I never would have left my job, rediscovered my passion for photography, or met Su Ting. So everything between us was meaningless? He considered this. It was like the Departure series. It recorded real pain, but it was also the start of something new. Our marriage was an important part of my life, but it's over, and I've moved on. Su Ting appeared in the doorway. Zhou Ming stood up. Can I ask one last question? Lin Yu said, her voice small. If I had come back sooner, if I hadn't gone back to Chun, could we have? Zhou Ming was silent for a long moment, then shook his head. No, some things, once they're broken, can never be truly fixed. He placed cash on the table. The coffee's on me. Be happy, Lin Yu. Watching them leave, she finally understood what he'd meant on the day of their divorce. I love the person I thought you were, but that person never really existed. The coffee was cold and sickeningly sweet. Her phone buzzed. It was her mother. Don't forget the family dinner this weekend. And bring Chen Yuan. Lin Yu started to laugh, a broken, hysterical sound as tears streamed down her face. She deleted Chen Yuan's number from her phone and walked out of the cafe. As she passed the gallery, she saw Zhou Ming explaining his work to a small crowd, Su Ting at his side, the picture of quiet support. Lin Yu didn't go in to say goodbye. She stepped into the elevator, and, as the door slid shut, she finally allowed herself to sob. Not for the man she had lost, but for the selfish, foolish woman who had thrown away true love and never even realized it until it was gone forever.